Hello Howard, it's Brian Gary from Split Engineering. I'm going to go ahead and make a video because I find this to be most useful because it gives you something visually to look at, and quite frankly it's probably going to be quicker than if I typed an email with instructions. So we have the first image, V1 conventional that you were talking about, and it looks to me the scales look good. There's obviously a defined trend. The cone that's closest to us has a larger scale, and it trends back to the smaller scale up in the top center, which is good. That's what we want. Ideally, directly in the center of your image, and the bottom scale would be 25% from the bottom, top scale about 20% from the top, just for proportionality, but your scales are fine. So the problem is it looks to me, though it's a simple assumption, and that assumption being whatever you draw a circle around is what is going to be analyzed. Unfortunately, that's not correct. The way this software works is everything that is enclosed is analyzed. So I see you've drawn around each large particle that you appear to be interested in. I see, even say down here in the lower right hand corner, there's a couple of particles you haven't drawn around. I don't know if you haven't gotten to them or those are particles you're not particularly interested in. In any case, if I scroll over, you will see that the particles will highlight. So let me show you. If I scroll over, say the lower right, it sees it as a particle. Therefore, what we need to do is we need to mask it out. As of right now, the proportionality of the size particles to what you've actually circled is not mathematically not able to be calculated from Split Desktop. So if I go over to the S-curve, it says you can't calculate. That's probably what you're talking about. Reason being is, yes, the lower right might not necessarily be affecting it for the results, but this whole background, Split Desktop sees it as one large particle. So I'm going to go over here to the mask fill tool. I'm going to mask out the background. I'm going to mask out everything I see that you didn't draw a circle around. Wow. That's good enough, right, for the sake of a video. So now if we go over to your results, bam, you have results. Okay. I hope that covers your question for V1 conventional. Okay, so now we're looking at V1 conventional 2. This is the one where I believe you semi-delineated, then hand delineated. I can tell that you're learning the program, which is great, and you actually appear to be doing okay. So you've drawn circles around these particles. Obviously, if you hand draw around the particles, you probably will be a little more accurate with your results than if you use a semi-autonomous delineation method. So you mentioned why there's a lot of blue. So let's go ahead and actually use a semi-autonomous delineation method, so that way we can talk through it. I'm going to go to delineate. You mentioned that it crashes if you go to the outermost more delineation. Sometimes that's the case. We'll go ahead and try it real quick with my computer. I think it mostly has to do with the amount of memory your computer's running. It appears I don't have too much running at one time. Let's try it. Works for me. So you mentioned you have an old laptop. Let's go ahead and potentially attribute it to that. But as you can see, I did it. So therefore, there's other parameters at play that might not be specifically the program. So I'll show you what I would do. You have your scales. That's the first thing I would always put in. You put in your scales. I would just adjust the delineations until you see that the corners most of the time are enclosed. In other words, two particles are not combined, they're not joined together. So I would go to the least amount of delineations possible to where it's not under delineating. See, this appears to be under delineating. As you can see, it spills over to adjacent rocks. So I'll go up. It looks like center might be good. So in this case, you do have challenging images. It's not a terrible thing, not at all. You ask why there's a lot of blue. There's a lot of blue. Basically, the simplest question, or the simplest answer I can give you, is contrast. As you can see, if I right-click, the rocks with more contrast, the darker rocks, in comparison to its surrounding lighter rocks, are the ones that show up with more blue. So time of day when you take a picture is important, and I guess when it comes to the type of aggregate or rock that you're dealing with, you don't have much control over that. So I'll show you the quick methods to deal with this. One thing that I like to do is I'll go up here to the polygon tool and say, for instance, if I don't want to sit here and erase this whole rock, I can simply draw a well, that was terrible. I push enter to close the polygon. I can simply draw a polygon around it. So now when you draw a polygon, I'll draw a couple. Let's say we'll do the adjacent rock to it. Enter to close. We'll do one more. Hope you have time to watch this video. It might be a few minutes long. Enter to close. So now basically I have 3 polygons to which I drew, and now all you need to do for split desktop to see them as particles and not masked out areas, you just empty them, and then you have your particles. That's one quick method. One thing to note that you might not know is, take for instance this lower left hand particle. There's a few lines that connect them. You don't need to clean off the rock completely. All you need to do is break the lines, and you can see it's highlighting as that rock. So I just go through and just break the lines. Your largest particles, obviously you're going to affect the S-curve the most, so I would definitely at least try to get those most accurate to its boundaries. And then lastly, we'll talk about the background. It looked like you already had that masked out when we first started, so let me just re-emphasize that. You need to have that masked out so that split does not see that as a large particle. Okay, I think I might have answered all your questions. Please email me with your concerns if you have any more questions. Thanks. Actually, here's a postscript just so you can see that this worked. We have the background masked out, we have your scale object masked out. Your particles obviously need a lot more editing. You know, it's pretty quick. I showed you a couple of the quick methods. So as soon as that's edited, but for the sake of it, so that you see the split is actually analyzing these particles and coming up with PSD, we'll just go over here to the curve and show you that it is calculating. So I have both of your projects calculating. Please contact me. Thanks.